Egypt snake show horror. A tourist went on holiday to Egypt when a cobra crawling inside his trousers turned the trip into a nightmare. A 57-year-old tourist has died after being bitten by a snake believed to be a cobra during a holiday entertainment show in Egypt, turning what was meant to be a fun family outing into a horrifying tragedy. Now we take a deeper look and break down this entire story on the AI podcast.
Welcome to the deep dive. So picture this for a second. You're on a family vacation at this luxury Red Sea resort.
Sounds pretty ideal, honestly.
Right. I mean, you've had a long day out in the sun, you've had a great dinner, and now you're just sitting back watching an evening entertainment show right there in a hotel venue.
Just typical tourist stuff.
Exactly. The crowd is laughing, people are taking photos, everyone's relaxed. But then instead of, pulling a rabbit out of a hat or something, a snake literally slithers up a man's trouser leg.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And in seconds, the entire vacation is just over. I mean, the laughter stops, that whole illusion of safety completely vanishes, and a man is suddenly in cardiac arrest right there on the ballroom floor.
It's honestly the ultimate nightmare scenario for a traveler. I mean, anywhere. You travel to these destinations to, escape the harsh realities of the world.
Exactly. You just want to check out.
Right. And suddenly the absolute most brutal aspect of untamed nature is just right there in the room with you. It's jarring.
It really is. And today we are exploring that exact terrifying moment when the artificial safety of a tourist resort just violently collides with the lethal reality of nature.
Which is such a crucial topic right now.
Yeah, we are looking at a really tragic report from early April. This involved a 57-year-old tourist from Bavaria, Germany. He had traveled to Hurghada, which, if you don't know, is this wildly popular resort city in Egypt on the Red Sea.
Very popular, yeah. Massive tourist hub.
Right. And he was there with 3 of his family members. They all attended what was billed as just a fun, interactive snake show. And, well, it ended in his death.
It's just so devastating for that family.
Truly. So our mission today is to unpack this specific event, but we are also going to use it to explore a much larger, frankly disturbing intersection between tourist entertainment, wildlife, and, safety oversight.
Which is really the only way to fully understand what happened here, I think.
Yeah, totally.
Because we aren't just looking at the timeline of a freak accident today. We're going to examine the broader patterns of wildlife incidents in this particular tourist hotspot.
Because it's not an isolated thing.
No, not at all. We have to ask what this means for safety standards across the board when we try to commercialize these interactions with untamed nature.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when you actually look at the mechanics of this snake show, as described in the report, it is genuinely difficult to process that this was a sanctioned tourist event.
It really is.
Yeah.
The details are shocking.
All right. The facts gathered by investigators show that the snake charmer was actively inviting tourists to interact with the reptiles.
Like bringing them up to the stage.
Yeah. I mean, guests were actually allowed to hold the snakes. They were placing them around their necks for photos and stuff.
Just treating them like props.
Exactly. And then during the performance, a snake crawls up this 57-year-old tourist's trouser leg and just bites him right near the top of his leg.
It's horrific to even picture.
I mean, I equate it to, treating a loaded gun like a stage prop just because someone handed it to you and said the safety is on.
That's a really good way to put it, actually.
Thanks. I mean, as a tourist, you naturally assume the danger is just an illusion. You think, well, it's a sanctioned show, the animal must be defanged, or, it's just not a venomous species.
Right. But I'd even take that a step further, honestly.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, it's not just an assumption of safety. It's almost a complete psychological surrender of your threat assessment.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
Think about the staging here. The operators are systematically dismantling the guest's natural human fear response.
Right, because normally you'd run from a snake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But by starting the show with tourists holding the snakes, draping them over their shoulders, they establish this false premise right out of the gate that these animals are just completely harmless props.
Right, because if I'm sitting there and the guy next to me just had a huge snake around his neck and he's totally fine, my brain is going to tell me, okay, the snakes are safe.
Exactly the mechanism at play. Once you convince a crowd that a snake around the neck is safe, well, allowing a snake to slither up a trouser leg just feels like the next escalating step in a, carefully choreographed magic trick.
It's just part of the act.
Right. The extreme risk has been entirely normalized for the audience.
Yeah.
But here is the detail from the text that should really just stop us in our tracks.
What's that?
The authorities and the people involved noted that the snake was, quote, believed to be a cobra.
Wait, believed to be?
Yeah.
That is a terrifying phrase when someone is already dead.
It implies an absolute void of control. I mean, if the people running the show or even the venue hosting it can only say the weapon was believed to be a certain species.
Then they have no idea what they're doing.
Exactly. It means the most fundamental baseline of safety was just missing. They didn't even definitively know what animals they were bringing into a closed room full of families.
Which means they definitely didn't have the appropriate antivenom just sitting in a cooler next to the stage.
Yeah, almost certainly not.
It's wild to me. And, here's where it gets really interesting. How does an entertainment setup even allow a potentially deadly cobra that kind of physical access?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Right. Like, a trouser leg isn't a controlled environment. Once it's up there, the animal is completely out of the handler's physical grasp.
Well, that's the complete breakdown of the illusion right there.
Yeah.
The handler lost physical control, likely assuming that the behavioral control, the quote-unquote tame nature of the snake, would hold.
But it's still a wild animal.
Exactly. Wild animals do not understand the concept of a luxury resort.
No, they don't get the script.
They don't. When a wild animal feels threatened or even just confused by the noise and the lights, it reverts to its instinctual nature.
Right, it strikes.
Yes, and the biological reality of that nature destroys the artificial entertainment setting in just a matter of seconds.
And the speed of that transition from a vacation show to a literal medical nightmare is just staggering in this report.
It's incredibly fast.
I mean, immediately after the bite, the 57-year-old man began showing severe signs of poisoning.
Those are your signs, right?
Yeah, he just collapses. He goes into full cardiac arrest. And, emergency responders are called to the scene, and they are performing urgent resuscitation right there.
In front of the whole crowd.
Exactly, in front of everyone before rushing him to a nearby hospital where he eventually dies. So what does this all mean for the victim's family? I keep thinking about the 3 family members who were with him.
It's just unfathomable.
You walk into a ballroom laughing, expecting a fun night, and moments later, you are literally watching your loved one go into cardiac arrest on the floor. The trauma there is just, it's immense.
The trauma is unimaginable. And, from a strictly medical standpoint, that rapid sequence of events...
The severe poisoning.
Yeah, the text specifies severe signs of poisoning leading directly to cardiac arrest. That speaks volumes about the sheer lethality of the situation.
It wasn't like a slow reaction where you have hours to figure it out.
No, not at all. This wasn't a slow-moving infection or a mild allergic response. This was an overwhelming, instantaneous physiological collapse.
It just feels like there's absolutely no safety cushion here. I mean, if you scrape your knee at the resort pool, sure, they have a first aid kit.
Right.
But they are completely unequipped for a code blue on the ballroom floor.
I look at it as a total mismatch of infrastructure.
Yeah.
The medical system actually did respond here, according to the report.
Right, the paramedics showed up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Emergency responders arrived, they performed resuscitation at the scene, and there was a rush to the hospital. They did what they were supposed to do.
But it still wasn't enough.
No, the event was still unsurvivable. And that leaves us with a very chilling reality regarding these types of tourist attractions.
Which is?
There is zero margin for error. You simply cannot rely on emergency services to save you if the illusion of safety breaks.
Because the venom moves too fast.
Right. The biological reality of a venomous bite moves significantly faster than human medical intervention can manage in that setting.
Man, and that absolute failure of the medical safety net is exactly what triggers the next, honestly, incredibly messy phase of this tragedy, which is the blame game.
Oh, absolutely. The legal side.
Yeah, because when a tourist dies on a stage who is actually legally responsible, since the medical response wasn't enough to save him, the authorities had to step in. And now we have this cross-border investigation that is surprisingly complex.
It's very complex, yeah.
The report mentions that the public prosecutor's office and the criminal police in Memmingen, Germany, have officially launched an investigation into the circumstances of his death.
Which, to be fair, is standard procedure when a citizen dies abroad under unnatural circumstances.
Sure, but the logistics of it are incredibly daunting, aren't they?
Oh, definitely.
I mean, I'm really hung up on this German police investigation detail. The police explicitly stated that the inquiry is, quote, open-ended.
Right.
And it is not focused solely on the snake charmer. Wait, if the investigation is open-ended and not just focused on the snake charmer, who else are they looking at?
Well, everyone involved in the chain of events.
It just marvels me. How does a local police force in Memmingen, Bavaria, even begin to untangle the liability of an entertainment show at an Egyptian resort miles and miles away?
It is a massive jurisdictional puzzle, no doubt about it.
Hmm.
But looking beyond just the snake charmer is really the only way to find actual, meaningful accountability.
You mean finding out who allowed it to happen?
Exactly. If the police say they aren't just looking at the charmer, they are heavily signaling that they are looking for systemic failures in the venue's oversight.
So it's almost like a Matryoshka doll of negligence.
Oh, I like that.
You open up the snake charmer's liability, but inside that is the liability of the event planner who booked him, and inside that is the liability of the hotel management who approved the show.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. Who actually hired the charmer? What were the resort's vetting protocols?
Did they even have any?
Right. Did the hotel management actually know that venomous animals were going to be draped over their guests' shoulders?
Mm-hmm.
The authorities are actively looking for the structural negligence that allowed such a lethal threat to be introduced into a supposedly safe family environment.
And a huge piece of unraveling that Matryoshka doll, according to the report, is the toxicology report, which is currently pending.
Yes, and that pending toxicology report is really the linchpin of the whole legal puzzle.
Why is that so crucial, though?
Well, from a common sense perspective, we all know what happened. A snake bit the man, he collapsed, he died, so obviously the snake killed him.
Right, it seems pretty cut and dry.
But the law doesn't run on common sense.
Mm-hmm.
It requires definitive biological proof of causality. Toxicology is needed to establish the exact, undeniable cause of death on paper.
What's the alternative, though? What else could it possibly be if not the venom?
Legally, they have to rule out a secondary medical event.
Like what?
For example, did the extreme panic, the sudden pain, and the shock of the bite trigger a massive, fatal heart attack before the venom itself even reached lethal levels?
Oh, I see.
Right. The toxicology report will officially, scientifically link the mechanics of the show, the biological cause of death.
Got it.
And having that undeniable link, it's absolutely essential for a cross-border investigation to have any real teeth when they're seeking accountability across international lines.
Wow. It is just fascinating and obviously deeply tragic how a single, seemingly isolated moment in a resort can trigger such a massive legal, medical, and diplomatic inquiry.
It really is a domino effect.
But this investigation into a single show actually opens up a much wider, much darker lens for us. Because the deeper we look into this region, we realize this was not an isolated anomaly at all.
No, unfortunately, it's part of a trend.
Hurghada and the broader Red Sea region actually have a heavily documented history of horrifying wildlife encounters.
It presents this profound paradox for the tourism industry over there.
How so?
Well, Hurghada is famous for its beautiful beaches, its incredible coral reefs, and all these sprawling, luxurious resorts.
Oh yeah, people flock there.
But it is also intimately linked to some truly shocking, fatal incidents involving dangerous wildlife. The very pristine, wild environment that draws millions of tourists is the exact same environment causing these tragedies.
And the examples in the sources are just deeply unsettling, honestly. They really shatter that whole all-inclusive resort illusion we were talking about.
They do.
Just recently, in December 2024, a 48-year-old Italian tourist named Gianluca Di Gioia was killed by a tiger shark.
That was a terrible story.
Yeah, he was just snorkeling near Marsa Alam, which is another hugely popular Egyptian destination on the Red Sea. He was in the water with a friend, and his friend actually managed to escape, but Di Gioia died from his injuries.
The randomness of that survival, one friend escapes to the shore, the other doesn't, it really just underscores the total lack of control humans actually have in that ecosystem.
We are just visitors. And honestly, it gets worse. Back in June 2023, a 23-year-old Russian tourist, Vladimir Popov, was killed in another terrifying tiger shark attack right in Hurghada.
That incident got a lot of international attention.
It did, because the detail that really sticks with you is the highly public nature of it.
Yeah, there are so many people around.
Witnesses literally watched helplessly from the shore, listening to him scream for help as he was dragged underwater.
It's chilling.
It is. It's like we treat this entire region as a giant, controlled amusement park, but the animals never got the script.
I think that amusement park analogy really hits the core of the systemic issue here.
Yeah.
If we synthesize this recent snake show incident with those shark attacks, A very clear and deeply troubling theme emerges from the data.
Which is?
We are looking at a violent recurring clash between human recreation and untamed nature.
But, playing devil's advocate here, I could see someone arguing that a snake show and a wild shark attack are totally unrelated.
Sure, people make that argument.
Right. I mean, one happens on land, indoors, in a ballroom. One happens out in the open ocean. One is a staged entertainment act, and the other is just wild, natural predator behavior.
I completely understand that perspective. But based on the patterns we're seeing, I would argue that the underlying common denominator is exactly the same.
What's that?
It's the tourists' expectation of safety in a commercialized zone and the total failure of that zone to actually protect them.
That makes a lot of sense.
Whether you are dealing with a supposedly, controlled venomous snake show or a wild snorkeling excursion just 20 feet off the beach of your hotel.
You expect to be safe.
Yes. The line connecting these tragedies is the infrastructure of tourism failing to manage the reality of the local ecosystem.
So it's the invisible safety net failing in both environments.
Exactly.
You think the resort has vetted the snake charmer, and you think the resort has netted the swimming area or at least monitored the waters for sharks.
Because you paid them.
Right. In both cases, the tourist assumes the threat has been neutralized by the very fact that a legitimate commercial entity is selling the experience.
Precisely the point. These events are not just random strings of bad luck anymore. They represent a growing pattern where the commercialization of an exotic environment is radically outpacing the safety protocols required to exist in that environment safely.
Which totally explains why there are growing public demands for tighter oversight right now.
The public is definitely waking up to this.
Yeah, the death of the 57-year-old Brazilian man at the snake show has raised entirely new, urgent questions about safety standards at tourist entertainment events in general. The text mentions loud calls for stricter rules to prevent future tragedies, specifically regarding any events involving wild or venomous animals.
And honestly, those calls for stricter rules are entirely justified.
You think so?
Absolutely, because the current framework is demonstrably failing people.
It clearly isn't working at all. I mean, we've traced the path today from a single fatal bite at a holiday show, which left a family just utterly devastated, to a complex multinational investigation run by a local German police force.
It's a huge web.
It is. And from there, we've uncovered a broader, really disturbing pattern of deadly wildlife encounters in this region, from hotel ballrooms to the open waters of the Red Sea.
It forces a really necessary reevaluation of how we interact with the world when we travel.
It really does. So think about the last time you went on vacation.
Oh boy.
When you booked that ticket, when you walked into that entertainment venue, or when you waded into that crystal clear water just a few feet from your beach chair, did you ever actually stop to think about the logistics of your safety?
Probably not.
Did you wonder where the nearest anti-venom was? Of course not. You just assumed someone else did.
Right. You outsourced that worry.
This deep dive really challenges you to ask how much of that safety is real and how much is just an illusion you're paying a resort to believe in.
It is a very sobering thought experiment. And, if we look back at the police investigation in Germany,
Yeah.
the fact that it is an open-ended inquiry leaves us with a pretty profound final thought, I think.
What's that?
If an investigation into a snake bite isn't just focused on the snake charmer, well, it forces us to ask, how far up the chain of command does the responsibility for your safety actually go when you buy a ticket to interact with untamed nature?
Wow. That is the question you really have to carry with you on your next trip. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next
Okay, one question for you. How did a family vacation in Egypt turn into a tragedy after a tourist was bitten during a snake show? And should resorts be banned from allowing close contact with dangerous animals? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.